Establishing shot. Hong Kong, outside the massive super yacht which serves as the headquarters of the 108 Dragons, China's most powerful triad. Interior, a very important meeting is underway. The powerful crime lords await their most skilled assassin, the one, the only, Crying Freeman.
ロン・タイアンです。
そしてそのニーズマンの
風鎮蘭でございます。
この者たちは我が108ドラゴンの大幹部たちじゃ。これからは大安であるお前の周りを常に回ることになる。推進へ。前進へ。地中へ。法人へ。無心へ。都心へ。天湾心へ。何をする天湾心。天湾心に化けた殺し屋か。わしらを欺くとは完璧な変装じゃ。
何者でしょうか。
Nanimono indeed. Welcome to the world of Crying Freeman. The Crying Freeman OVA anime series is ridiculous, and there's little better way for me to demonstrate this than to just guide you through its murky realm of crime, assassination, and all sorts of unnecessary disrobing.
には2つの条件がある。一つは
Crying Freeman is the tale of one Hinomura Yo, a famous Japanese potter. A convoluted yet short series of events sees Yo kidnapped by the infamous 108 Dragons, the most powerful Chinese assassination ring in the world. As he is forcefully inducted into this world of assassination, brainwashed into becoming the perfect killing machine, Yo gains the very imposing moniker Crying Freeman. Crying because he cries whenever he kills.
Crying Freeman. Crying は泣き叫ぶことである。
Thanks for that? Freeman, because he wants to be a free man.
108ドラゴンの組織から逃れることはできぬ。帰りたい。日本へ帰りたい。自由になりたいか、フリーマン。
Or at least he did for like 5 minutes in a flashback, but most of the show he's the leader of the world's most powerful assassination ring and seems perfectly happy in that role. He also gains a sweet tattoo, which, and I can't stress this enough, is a dragon holding a gun. Crying Freeman is both a shadowy figure obsessed with anonymity yet somehow famous enough to be recognized by random thugs. In fact, characters so like the sound of his name that it feels like a certain percentage of the 6-episode show is taken up by people saying it.
私はクライングフリーマン。
フリーマン。フリーマン。
フリーマンだ。
フリーマン。フリーマン。フリーマン。フリーマン。フリーマン。フリーマン。フリーマン。フリーマン。フリーマン。フリーマン。フリーマン。
Freeman.
Freeman. Freeman.
Freeman. Freeman. Freeman. Freeman.
Freeman.
Freeman. Yeah. Freeman.
Freeman.
Freeman. Freeman. Freeman. Freeman. Freeman. Freeman.
Freeman. Come on, Freeman.
Freeman. Freeman.
Freeman.
お前がフリーマン。そうだ。私はクライングフリーマン。
Freeman.
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 Freeman. Freeman.
Freeman.
Freeman.
Freeman.
Freeman. Freeman. Freeman. Freeman.
Freeman.
Freeman.
Freeman.
Freeman.
Freeman.
フリーマン。フリーマンですもの。フリーマン。フリーマン。フリーマン。フリーマン。フリーマンは
Freeman.
Freeman. Freeman. Freeman.
Freeman.
Freeman, Freeman.
Freeman も Freeman や Freeman
Freeman. Freeman. Freeman.
Freeman
Freeman. Freeman. Freeman か。Freeman か。Freeman. Freeman. 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 Freeman.
So you don't make a second mistake. I'm crying Freeman.
Believe it or not, these aren't even all the times people say Freeman's name throughout the 6 episodes. Some aren't really orally appropriate for this YouTube video. Freeman's trajectory as the world's greatest assassin is sort of, but not really, impacted by falling in love with a witness, his greatest partner, Hino Emu. Joining Freeman is a ragtag group of various assassins, villains, and your episodic femme fatales, who seem to exist mostly to hate and then fall helplessly under the sway of Freeman's pure tattooed machismo. Did I mention that this show is from the 1980s? In fact, Freeman is a perfect encapsulation of the era of anime on videotape, when the culture in Japan was changing as national wealth and technology allowed a niche medium to blossom into something often technically impressive and narratively hilarious. It's also the creation of hard-boiled manga's best author and a beloved artist. Most of all, though, it's wonderful B-grade schlock. Join me on this journey, if you will, on the inaugural episode of our new occasional series, Unseen Schlock. The original Crying Freeman manga is the creation of Koike Kazuo, easily one of the most admired creators of the nebulous seinen genre. Manga aimed at a slightly older male audience from high schoolers through men in their 40s. Koike's most famous work is the highly acclaimed Lone Wolf and Cub, a samurai manga that made it big not only in Japan but abroad. He also created the famous Lady Snowblood, whose film versions Tarantino is such a fan of. Koike is particularly well known for his hard-boiled, violent, mature series, and on the Crying Freeman manga running from 86 to 88, he delivered on these themes in spades. The high-detailed and realistic art for the series was drawn by Ikegami Ryoichi, perhaps best known for his beautiful work on Mai, the Psychic Girl. His art is, mostly done as much justice as you could expect in this sort of animated series. Now, this is kind of intended as a comedy video, but I can't resist talking a little bit about medium history. The Crying Freeman OVA series, starting in 1988, is a perfect example of an era of anime. Episode 1 released at the very height of the massive economic bubble of the 1980s, when Japan was monetarily at the top of the world. The Japanese economic miracle, the envy of countries world over, and a source of cultural anxiety for many in America and elsewhere, had lifted a once impoverished nation out of the post-war doldrums, and created a massive Japanese middle class with stable lifetime employment and cash to burn.
フリーマン
Japanese people made headlines around the world. In the past year, Japanese investors have bought up everything from Burger Kings to golf courses. They now own most of the hotels along famed Waikiki Beach.
Money flowed into personal coffers and production war chests alike. Japanese who had loved the anime TV shows of the 50s, 60s, and 70s were coming of age and suddenly had a purchasing power no previous generation had known before. This coincided with the emergence of home video in the late 1970s as videotape technology. For decades, the prohibitively expensive domain of industrial studios suddenly became obtainable for the average household. This meant that movies and TV, once singular events to be remembered but rarely ever returned to, could suddenly be re-engaged with over and over from the comfort of a family living room. In the words of anime historian Jonathan Clements, this transformed the available archive of anime resources from an exclusive club into a mass market phenomena. Home video was becoming a third medium, in addition to the older mediums of theatrical films and TV broadcast. In the 1980s, as there steadily came to be VHS players in almost every household, rental stores exploded onto the scene, becoming a cultural touchstone which, unlike in the US, remains strong today. With this new avenue available to sell anime productions to a newly affluent, more adult audience, animation studios began outputting more risky, niche, or just plain risque products than what could be put on conservative, generalized TV broadcast, or into expensive theatrical runs. The result was the burgeoning OVA, or OAV depending on which nomenclature you prefer, industry. OVA stands for Original Video Animation. From the very first OVA, 1983's Dallos, directed by Oshii Mamoru of Ghost in the Shell fame, direct-to-video anime became a mainstay, and is in many ways a distribution method around which the modern anime fandom developed, in both Japan and in the US. But behind the ever-increasing glut of short manga adaptations and one-offs was a shadow industry. The massive market for animated pornography. More legitimate animated fare still attempted to share in this market by creating products that tiptoed between titillation and more marketable storytelling and optics, mixing violence and mature themes believed to attract a very predominantly male audience ranging from high schoolers to middle-aged men. Crying Freeman, one of many OVA manga adaptations, follows this formula to a T. It's hyper-violent and near-pornographic. It's the exact sort of creation that flourished on the direct-to-VHS market of the 1980s. The type whose cheap licensing rights and shock value made OVAs the prime candidate for distribution abroad. No wonder Americans of the 1980s and 90s associated Japanimation with violence and nudity. These were the types of products showing up in Blockbuster and Hollywood Video, plastered uniformly with "for mature audience" stickers. But more than just a vehicle for softcore insanity, OVAs provided animators with the budget and leeway to flex their creative muscles. They also allowed animation studios to spend a few $100,000 worth of yen on relatively short but intense niche products that they could claim more ownership of than ever before. The result is a time period where money, creativity, demand, and the visual and oral aesthetics of the 80s coalesced into a medium still beloved worldwide, even as its exact styles and ethos have since disappeared. Personally, I first encountered the wondrously over-serious world of Crying Freeman in middle school. I was already really into anime, having started seeking out anime at those same Blockbusters and Hollywood Videos. By this time, I'd seen quite a few movies, OVAs, and TV shows, but when I encountered Freeman, maybe in an issue of Animerica, I honestly can't quite remember, the idea of an anime more along the lines of serious, violent, and adult live-action Hollywood movies sounded pretty appealing. I mean, I was a teenager. And yes, Freeman has been adapted into a Hollywood movie. I might be able to cover that in another video at some time in the future. Let me know if you'd like me to. But even with my less than picky attitude towards anime at the time, something about Freeman felt off. Sure, the first episode had some striking violence and an intriguingly mature setup, but it was just so stilted, even in what ended up being the two best episodes of the show. Worse, the characters are just, for lack of a better word, strange. Thinking about other anime schlock that I loved as a kid, Demon City Shinjuku. The first anime I sought out as anime, renting from Hollywood Video when I was a 5th grader, appealed to me so much more. It isn't a good movie by any means, but the conflict is clear and the characterizations, while simple and flimsy, are consistent throughout the film. You know who each person is, even if they're just archetypes. Heroic dude.
So you should be. Let her go, you bastard, or you're gonna be spitting out teeth.
Lady with a British accent for some reason in the dub.
Don't doubt my courage.
Forget it.
Don't you have the courage to sacrifice your life to save the world?
That's beside the point.
Little kid with an even weirder Mexican accent in the dub.
Yeah, well, you can show it with some green bucks. Hey, you think you can take me for a sucker? Guru, you see what I got on tonight's menu?
And the demon from Hell guy.
A demon of hell, and what a fitting place to find him.
Green bucks.
Oh, and Rebby Raw. Most memorable for me as a villain because his name means bad rabbi in Hebrew. Crying Freeman is no Demon City Shinjuku. Maybe it's because of the long wait between each episode or the adapting random parts of the manga element, but after the first 2 episodes, characterization generally falls off a cliff. Freeman cries because he's forced to kill people, but he happily takes on the job as master of the 108 dragons and keeps on killing people. He loves the people who tortured and brainwashed him. No attempt is ever really made to make this all make sense. It just sort of happens. But as any fan of B-movies know, this silly characterization is actually sort of the whole charm, watching it now at least. My taste for good, bad film is much more advanced now than as a middle schooler, and Freeman, it's just so wondrously schlocky and weird, all of it. But don't take my word for it. Oh, so I'll mostly be showing you the original Japanese version of the show. Yeah, the dub adds an extra layer of hilarity like so many dubs of this era do.
Go according to plan. I love you.
I swear I'll come back and nail your ass.
You're welcome to try if you like.
Hey, that's Freeman. He's the leader of the 108 Dragons. It's Freeman. Freeman runs.
But this show was already pretty great to begin with. And before we start, I just need to mention that this is what my old Freeman DVDs started with.
Japan's premier anime magazine is finally available in English.
To get any closer to the source,
you'd have to read Japanese. Free bonus gear.
Poster, centerfold, manga, postcard, DVD.
Subscribe now.
I love anime.
Yeah. And manga.
And gaming.
The very first episode opens with some very important information. So Hino Emu has a problem. She's witnessed a triad hit. They're in China. Freeman speaks Chinese, then they switch to Japanese. Freeman tells her the character used to write his already Japanese name, and that's why she calls him Mr. Yo in English. Her other problem is that she's kind of obsessed with the killer, which she seems to think ties into that other issue she was writing about in her diary.
一つだけこの世に未練のようなものがあるのです。私を殺すなら。
You what?
Oh, and she also happens to witness a second murder by Freeman, like 2 days later back in Japan. Or were they always in Japan? It's a bit unclear. Bang! I should mention that this is easily one of the 2 most coherent episodes in the show. Freeman has killed a Yakuza boss, so both Yakuza and the police are after him.
Mr. Yo.
Eh?
They attempt to have Emu be their stooge, but she refuses, so the upstanding police dude just lets a vengeful Yakuza into her sweet mansion. Freeman has come, to take care of loose ends.
Good evening.
Emu suggests they kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and by 2 birds I mean 1 her. Freeman and his best dude stop the Yakuza. Emu gets shot, but she's fine in like 5 seconds. Back at Hunt for Assassinatober, the matron of the 108 Dragons isn't super into Freeman neglecting his duties for some random lady. I can tell why he stays with them, really.
Go, Tokugan!
Yes.
I suppose you screwed her also. Why didn't you kill her?
Freeman needs this woman. She's good for him. Because he's a man.
Also, this badass Yakuza dude survived a knife to the nape of the neck and multiple bullets. Is this man going to be Freeman's nemesis? Nope. The wife of the former boss might be, though, after blackmailing policeman. Emu and Freeman are reunited.
Oh my god!
Crying Freeman.
Freeman reveals his tragic backstory to Emu.
But it was I!
The real crying Freeman.
May I have your attention, please?
And she's like really into it. Yakuza boss lady and policeman attack. She's topless for literally no reason, but once again, this is crying Freeman. Everyone's always topless for no reason. Emu and Freeman defeat the
Yakuza bastards
with a pretty cool plan. Dang, she's known Freeman for all of 5 days and she's already cold-blooded. They disappear into the ether. Also, Emu gets naked for no reason. Freeman! And that's episode 1. Kinda silly, but actually quite enjoyable overall. Great animation and design. Much more grounded than what's to come, somehow. In today's episode of Great Moments in Dubbing.
How much do you want?
9,999,999,999 yuan.
Too much. How about a discount?
Well, we can come down a couple of yuan.
That's still too expensive.
Oh yeah? We better go now.
Can't you come down a little more?
66 or nothing.
If that's your final offer, it's a deal.
It's been one episode, and Freeman and Emu, now given Chinese names to indicate their ranks, are already inheriting the 108 dragons.
今日からそなたの名前は風神蘭。
風神蘭。はい。老夫様、風神蘭でございます。
おお、風神蘭か。
Freeman is introduced to the Planetoid Council, and we've already seen how that goes.
That we were going to welcome Ran Taiyan and Fu Qin Ran.
You must recover all the energy immediately, Mega Man.
Here today was top secret, and yet somehow the news got out. Obviously, Ten Wan Xin is dead. The only way for a killer to get in here is to have help from the inside.
Would you shut up, man?
There's a traitor in their midst. Freeman vows to find them out. Their investigation shows that the Mission Impossible mask was made by a dude with some heavy debts out in Macau. We then get a only somewhat confounding confrontation. Freeman is utilizing his trademark Fusei Kakure technique. Injure a lackey and then follow them when they seek help from a higher-up. Actually, one of the more interesting ideas in the show.
Mega Man? We are now introduced to Baya-san, another Freeman mainstay. She's murderous, a brat, and way overpowered, but everyone still loves her.
108ドラゴンの組織をあたいにちょうだい。お父ちゃまの悪口を言わないで。あたいにはいつも優しかったもん。愛してくれたもん。ぎゃ。お前がフリーマンかい？
噂には聞いていたが、ベイヤーさん、お前は大きいな。
何もかもうまくいきましたな、お嬢様。
Malarkey! Ran Taiyan and Fu Qin Ran.
何故に後継者を日本人などにしたのじゃ。日本人の部下になるなど、わしゃ我慢がならぬわ。
組織をお嬢に譲るのをあんたがうんと言ってくれればわしは自分の責任は取る。力添えをしてくれたカモラの組織もこの件から手を引く約束じゃ。そんな約束したかな。
So, within the course of the first half of the episode, we have secret treachery, double-crossing, a reveal, and then a reverse reveal, all featuring brand new characters we've often only known for seconds. Did I mention that this episode then shifts gears to an entirely different plot? But yeah, it was actually the Camorra behind it all. You know, the guys from Campania, who are like the Mafia, but different. Although this guy's name is actually Don Corleone.
Don Corleone.
Freeman was faking it all. In an honestly fairly cool scene, he takes them all out with his foot-wielded gilded knife. He defeats her easily. Even though she tried to murder them all, she becomes their adoring servant. She's also now part of the Freeman harem? Or maybe it's a throuple. It's all a bit confusing, but this is Crying Freeman. Kinda just have to roll with it.
Freeman.
Byasan is basically Freeman's bodyguard for the rest of the show. She's kinda great, but also kinda sucks. Now it's Fuchinran's chance to get a sweet organized crime tattoo. Freeman does it himself by hand, so she should be pretty happy it didn't end up like this. This woman we've never seen before uses a computer program which supposedly knows whether or not Freeman has a dead angle. Random aside, a dead angle is, and I quote, an angle outside of a fortification which cannot be reached by the direct fire of the defenders. It's also a strangely popular term in Japan. Freeman discovers that this is Don Corleone's paramour, and that she's after his life. The next step is to figure out what she's up to. Her goal is to fit in with all the visiting white golfers, which, hey, isn't a bad plan.
部屋に入ったきり出てきません。取材陣でごった返してます。はい、十分気をつけます、コウさん。
That was a cheap shot!
私がキッチェだよ。
Kish over here then uses Freeman's own Fusei Kakure strategy against him, which is actually kinda cool. Pretty much the only time this show is actually interestingly plotted like this. As completely weird as her fake black person thing is, her half episode is probably the closest the show ever gets to actually being good. She's actually formidable and has a real plan that sort of makes sense, and actually affects the plot, such that it is, of Crying Freeman overall.
んフリーマン
Freeman takes off his shirt for the duel, of course, but I guess not his pants this time. Nah, never mind. And she's getting into him. What a surprise.
その顔その肌を血まみれにさせたらそして苦しむ顔を見たら
It's complex characterization, okay? And thus ends what is easily the best episode of the show. Great bang for your buck in terms of being hilarious and engaging. With the third episode, we're now in the 1990s, and something interesting is happening with this show. With each episode being released at least 1 year after the last, the show's whole production spans from 1988 to 1994. Essentially, we move through over half a decade of real time between the release of Episode 1 and Episode 6, which represent very different time periods in Japan. By 1994, the economic bubble was well and truly ended, even as money spent on anime video only increased. Crying Freeman's animation style changes as the years go by, with different directors, animation directors, and staff working on different episodes. The first 2 episodes, although silly, are beautifully animated. From episode 3 onwards, things get a bit rougher for a bit there. Three is actually a sequel to 2, but in style and spirit, it's already pretty different. Thankfully, while it's in no way good, it's still some pretty good schlock. Things start off with a pretty uncomfortable test of Emu's love, as Freeman sets her up to think she's being kidnapped and then has her tortured and threatened with worse. All to prove her loyalty. She's pretty chill with it. Kinda toxic, but okay. Immediately afterwards, we get a 1970s style airplane hijacking, from back when hijackings were fairly standard affairs. This one is run by the Horn of Africa, meaning this episode is going to give us even more completely tasteful depictions of black people. Yay! Freeman does his whole Fusei Kakure thing, and they, just run after a speeding jeep, and no one stops them.
申し訳ありません。
Back at Floating Dragon HQ, the 108 Council watches stock footage of the, unfortunately designed Horn of Africa leaders killing African wildlife for some reason.
ケツを取りたいと思いますじゃ。引き続きアフリカの騎馬と戦うかどうか。ノー、ノー、ノー、ノー、ノー、ノー。
I implore you to reconsider.
No.
Okay. Wait, isn't he dead? He's totally already dead.
必ず攻めてくる。大丈夫ですじゃ。
They're sure nothing will come of this whole Horn of Africa thing.
どうやってですかの？若頭領は少し神経質にな。
I'm sure they're right.
ビジネスできたものだ。フリーマンのところへ運んでくれ。よし。
Damn it.
よし。
And now, the new crying Freeman trope. The classic dude who talks for a while after getting a knife through the head.
108ドラゴンなんて言ったところでちょろいもんよ。銭で殺しを依頼されてる習性から、たったの200万ドルでどのチェックもフリーパスだ。
Hey, Guy, sure you don't have anything else to say? Got anything else there? Okay. Also, Bayasan is immortal.
客の命が集まって党の命を守り、その命と地位を夢夢粗末にしてはなるまいぞ。こうなることをよくぞ見抜いた。今や名実ともにお前は108。
This is apparently so convenient that it causes Freeman to do his dance of joy.
Enough!
108ドラゴンも壊滅したようです。
Thankfully, Crying Beardman caught a unique scent coming off horn number 2 from, up there. I have to admit that I'm pretty sad that Freeman is Beardman for all of a single scene. My lord, it really is the 80s. Okay, so Freeman's amazing plan is to become an incredible hairstylist in some city somewhere and just hope to smell somebody with ambergris on them.
龍涎香の香りだ。
ambergris.
And then sleep with them. And then use them to track down the guy. Legit.
何者だ
Dr. Wowie.
Oh! お前がフリーマン。
そうだ。私はクライング・フリーマン。
ミスったぜ、このシケバルは。
Seriously, where is this supposed to be taking place?
わしは現場へ行ってみる。シケバルがやられたなどとは信じられん。まさか、お前はフリーマン。
そうだ。アフリカの牙のボスジゴン、我が108ドラゴンの大幹部、新進神の仇を討つ。
Rolling around at the speed of sound.
よくも死神を連れてきてくれたな。
終わった。
Yes, I too am sure it's over.
私はバグなの。アフリカの牙を司る者。
Fire shield reactivate! Has Freeman met his match? No, because he still has one trick up his sleeves. Not wearing sleeves.
I don't know what I expected.
Yeah, I'm not gonna show you how it happens, but needless to say, the Freeman thruple is now a quadruple. Freeman, that is not sanitary.
俺の血をすすっていてアリクイか。
Freeman is saved, and now they're basically doing the Rocky 3 thing. The next half of the episode does the usual swing to a totally different plot. This one is about Emu trying to become more independently powerful for her husband's sake. She does this by traveling to a completely realistic portrayal of Kowloon. And communing with a sexist sword.
あんたはもっと根本的なことを忘れている。剣は女を嫌うんじゃよ。
She communes with it by nearly getting killed.
値にしてね。
ロンセン、スタンバイ。
Freeman's a submarine. That's some great Cantonese voice acting. A bunch of thugs show up to murder them and eat chicken. But Emu manages to get out of the situation by, and I'm serious here, stripping down, doing a kata, and having the old man sing. And then they're all friends. Oh, and Freeman is here too.
Ron Rai ra. Who killed Ron Rai? Ron Tong Fu, you just the phone.
So there's 3 episodes left, and honestly, I don't have quite as much to say about them. The budget drops off a cliff in 4, and while the rest of them have their moments, both sort of cool and very dumb, the last 3 just aren't quite as entertaining. 4 is especially ugly as the art tries to replicate manga-style cross-hatching and shading with unfortunate results. Episode 4 does feature more of Bagu Nagu, It also features Freeman fighting a giant Japanese pro wrestler who seems to shift in height in every scene. He fights the wrestler in only the second dumbest mask we've seen him wear. Also, that wrestler is working for an evil golden bear cult. And the antagonists from episode 1 are in the cult. And the cult wants to make a copy of Freeman in order to be able to control the 108 dragons to spread the bear cult around the world, somehow. Freeman once again sexes an enemy into complete and utter devotion. Also, to be completely honest, from here on out the show veers into near pornography, something which doesn't really gel that well with the episode with the worst art.
Slice. オシは孤児だったのよ。だから愛を知らないの。そして殺す相手に必ず質問するのよ。愛している者の存在を。
Episode 5 is about a dastardly kidnappers association called...
Kidnappers Organization.
Creative. A woman has appeared, and by this point we know what this means in the show.
Freeman.
その裏切り者を見つけ出せ!
This is also the episode where Freeman takes on some Americans named Lucky Boyd.
やはり来たか。ブラボー、理想的なランディングだ。さすが108流の大将、結構なお手並み拝見させてもらったよ。
And Larry Buck.
私はラリー・バックだ。
Excuse me, Larry Buck. I'm known as the goddess of children.
Larry Buck is literally Big Boss, and he's totally running an outer heaven for a bunch of former Green Berets.
おうさ、ここは俺たちの国なんだ。ベトナム帰りのあの乱暴がここにはうじゃうじゃいるんだ。
God, I'm already a goddess of children.
They're implementing a convoluted plan to get Freeman since their queen, named Nina Heaven, really has a thing for our boy, Kimura Yo, which is just a real shocker in this show.
やっと思いが叶うわ。ベトナムに派遣されたまま行方不明になった兄を探しにアジアへ行ったの。
You thought Game of Thrones invented sex position.
10年前だった。香港に立ち寄った時、ホテルのドアボーイがマフィアのボスを。
Wake me up! Wake me up inside! I can't wake up! Wake me up inside! Save me!
その時から私はあなたの虜になったの。
And guess Emu needed to die since she saw Freeman make a kill, but Miss Heaven can take pics willy-nilly and she's good to go. You know, I thought episode 4 was the most pornographic, but I lied. It's definitely this episode, to such an extent that I can barely show you the last third of it. Miss sets up a duel between Freeman and for her literal viewing pleasure. They fight. Then Byasan and Emu blow everyone up. And then Byasan has to be hoisted up by a helicopter while she runs over the water to get home. Oh, and Freeman takes out Nina Heaven in the most Freeman way possible, which, alas, I can't really show you here either. This episode marks the end of Crying Freeman's direct adaptation of the manga, and of the standard we've come to know thus far. The next and final episode barely features Emu, let alone the rest of the cast. The strange Freeman family fades into the background for the only Freeman episode to feature an original story made for the anime. The end result is a bit more stylish and a bit more serious, but honestly is a little bit less fun for lack of all these kind of likable, silly characters. So, this dude is taking over the quote-unquote Russian connection from the 108 Dragons. For his efforts, he's rewarded with a quote-unquote Eskimo woman. Wow, that's some impressive Ruski Izik. What's interesting about this episode, besides how different the whole thing feels from the rest of the show, is how much the animation style has changed since 1988 and episode 1. This is still hand-drawn cell animation, but the colors and shading are really starting to take on that 90s look. The animation is actually some of the best in the show, but doesn't look as classic anymore. The designs remind me of something from Kite or Mezzoforte. Of course, the episode doesn't benefit from Ikegami's beautiful manga designs, so there's that. Still, it's bathed in this atmospheric purple light, with some great shots and framing, and a surprising amount of well-thought-out action scenes. Overall, this is probably the best Crying Freeman has ever looked. Our villain of the year is bringing 3,000 Russian mafioso into Japan.
フリーマン、あの船には3000人のロシアマフィアが乗っている。もうすぐその埠頭に着く。俺が日本のヤクザどもを牛耳るために呼んだ兵隊どもだ。すぎる。108ドラゴンのことも、私のことも。フリーマン。
And of course, we have to end with not one, but two classic Freeman knife in the head but still talking scenes. The nastoyashi pachimu is how you're still talking.
So you don't make a second mistake. I'm Crying Freeman.
And so Crying Freeman ends. 6 years, 6 episodes, many, many random nude fights, and so many Freemans. Strangely enough, despite the stilted storyline and lack of much real character work, I still found myself getting a bit attached to Yo and Emu. Despite how incredibly strange their relationship is, this makes it all the weirder that she literally only appears in the final episode in flashbacks, and then finally in an after-credits scene. Their relationship is the core of the show, and one of the most memorable things in a series where most of the memorable stuff is just wacky. So yeah, Crying Freeman is ridiculous. It's problematic, and it's often just baffling. But it's also a fairly beautiful example of the sort of anime that was possible in the late 80s and early 90s, while video still ruled and the bubble was still strong enough or its after effects still present enough that real money could be invested in a long-running mature series like this. While there still are anime being made for older audiences, and honestly likely better anime than Freeman, it's still a relic from a bygone time. A problematic, silly time, but anime is still both of those things a lot of the time, just in different ways. As it stands, Freeman makes for great B-movie night viewing, when you can crack open a beer with friends and have a laugh. Like much of the great schlock of the period in both Japan and the US...
What does katana mean? It means Japanese sword.
Your enjoyment may depend on how much you can stomach random sex scenes, misogyny, and a lot of gratuitous violence. Unlike much of the best of the worst in live-action form, however, Freeman has some true talent behind it, in the form of its usually impressive animation. None of this makes it good, but for the most part, it does make it fun. By the time Freeman ended, the economic bubble of the 80s had been popped and gone for 3 years. The so-called Ushiwareta Junen, the lost decade, had begun. Rental stores survived, but were majorly impacted. OVAs were still selling well, and would even have a major boom in 1995, but the nature of the industry had changed. Risk was no longer their business. OVAs do live on today, but in a very different form, often as special episodes shrink-wrapped with manga, or following up popular anime series and featuring explicit content that can't be seen on TV. The world of Freeman and that style of OVA is a thing of the past. But thanks to the existence of home and now digital media, it's a past we can return to literally any time you want to. And in this case, I'm glad I did. You know, in the later episodes, I really missed the old leader of the 108 Dragons.
Who was this man, Ron?
What? His name was Ron?
I am Ron.
Oh, they're both Ron. Alright, Mina, thanks for joining me for this episode. This was a bit of an experiment and a departure from my more serious themes, but I do have a love for this sort of old media. And dare I say, there is something interesting to consider amidst all the schlock, both in terms of the media and historically speaking. Depending on how everyone reacts to this episode, I might continue the Unseen Schlock series with some other silly entries, so let me know what you think, and if you've ever watched Crying Freeman, the anime, or one of the various live-action adaptations. There were actually some from Hong Kong, as well as Hollywood. I'll be back again soon with something a bit more standard, I swear. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving us a like and a subscribe, or maybe even joining our Patreon. We have some cool exclusives, and it's how we're able to keep producing content, both here and on our main website. The link is below. I'll be seeing you again soon, so shed no tears. Until then, I'll be a free man. Mata ne.
終わったんですね。
フリーマン